Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Angelica Cortez. I work for the LA Phil, and I'm here to welcome you all today, and more importantly, to welcome our guests. This is our Pathways series where y'all are going to hear a little bit about different pathways in classical music, and more specifically, the pathways that this amazing group of people have taken in classical music, in their lives, and how they bring who they are into the work that they do. So, really, really excited to welcome our panelists. I'm here with my colleague Emily Bourne from the Phil. I'll just tell you all who these folks are real quick, and then I'll pass the mic over to the fabulous Katie and Dalanie. So you know Katie and Dalanie from last week. We also have with us here Clifton, Amare, and Jasmine. Katie, Dalanie, y'all take it away.
Hey everybody, we're back. I'm Dalanie. I'm a bassist and alumna of YOLA, and I'm wrapping up my degree in double bass performance at the Eastman School of Music.
And it's Katie. I'm a violist and recent graduate of the Eastman School of Music, where I got my master's degree in viola performance and music education. I'm currently a fellow with the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, and we are the hosts of Classically Black Podcast,
where we talk all things classical music and being Black in the profession,
with track beats playing in the background. After noticing a lack of community among Black classical musicians in our environment, we created Classically Black Podcast,
where we gas up classical musicians, we highlight Black composers, Stan Tchaikovsky, and we talk about issues pertaining to Black classical musicians.
We're so excited to be here today with Amare, Clifton, and Jasmine, our friends and colleagues who noticed lack, filled a void, and started their own stuff. Welcome, y'all.
Hey.
Hi.
Clifton with the.
Listen, I don't even know how we gonna keep this to an hour because we are all friends.
Right, it's about to be
all
work.
This is.
But Dalanie, not Clifton with the neck.
The ascot, very good.
Can we get into this? Can we get into this?
And Amari with the he got his brand. Come on, brand. Come on, CEO. Listen, this is gonna be a mess.
CEOs.
Look at us already off topic on brand. So first, let's just let people get to know y'all, where y'all from, and how you got into music. Anybody could start.
Okay, I'll start. I'll start. So I play the oboe, and founder of Black Classical Music Educators. And you want to know how I started music, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started music at the age of 5. There was a little pause though, because I started violin when I was 5 to 7, and then didn't play music for a little bit and restarted at the age of 11 in middle school band. But the way I started was from PBS. It was like a great performance, I think. And I just saw the life of the orchestra and decided I wanted to play the violin. And I think it was because like that was like the majority of the orchestra and they moved so much. So I told my mom I wanted to start violin. And wait, hello? Oh, okay. So I started the flute in middle school, and then I began the oboe in high school, and I stuck with that ever since.
Period.
I can go. My name is Amari. I'm from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I started music like at 2 or 3 in church. My grandfather was a pastor and my mom directed, so I would like stand next to her while she directed the choir. Then I had a cousin who sang, and we would like record Kirk Franklin and Hezekiah Walker. But I started classical music in the 4th grade. I started playing violin. Then I went to a magnet school and I started saxophone in 6th grade, switched to oboe in 7th grade, started piano lessons, then like some other like bass clarinet, baritone sax, and then Hammond organ.
Just tell us the instruments you don't play. That would be
right.
Brass instruments. I do not play brass instruments, but if it has like a reed or some keys, I can probably figure it out. So yeah, started arranging like in 10th or 11th grade for the band. Started composing officially in college. And then I started Arts in Action a few years ago. I'm a middle school orchestra teacher.
I'm Clifton. I'm a bassoonist and composer. I'm from Houston, land of Beyonce.
Very
And
good.
how I got how I got into music is my family is Creole, like the seasoning. But so we went to a lot of Zydeco's and like in church halls and everything. So in sixth grade in Texas, you start band in sixth grade. We don't really do a ton of orchestra, but so I played saxophone and I did the whole all region, all state thing. And I switched to bassoon the summer before I went to college. And then I went to state school for a year and I did not enjoy it. So I transferred to conservatory and started composing and all of that. And now I've just started doing a lot of teaching of taking the bassoon out of the Western context. Like, even though it was made in Germany, it doesn't have to live in the land of Weber, you know? So that's pretty much my project these days.
Ooh.
Not Vabering with the little, you know what I'm talking about. The way he be writing.
What way, Katie? What way?
Jasmine, we're in a professional contest. Let's not do this. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit, but tell us about your experience with like the traditional path of classical music.
You're talking
to
Back to
we
front.
can do same order. We could whatever you want to do.
Can you repeat that?
Tell us about your experience with the traditional path of classical music. So maybe just elaborate a little bit more on maybe what you studied and like how your experience was with that. You know, you don't have to go too into detail about like, every week at conservatory, but just, just expand upon that, that a little bit more. Tell us about like because this is about branching off, right? So we just want to hear about what you were doing first.
Yeah. I would say that my path was very traditional until, I guess, grad school. I started with Suzuki lessons, middle school band, borough-wide band lessons on the weekends, straight to conservatory, and straight to grad school. And I had no problem with the traditional route. I really loved it. I loved the seriousness about it for some reason, and I loved the rep. But I realized that the traditional route environment was not always welcoming for me. So and I wanted to change like the environments that I was in, and from there I got really into contemporary music, and I went to Gateway's music festival, so festivals that welcomed who I was as a musician.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's wrong with that. Like, I think Dalanie and I have been very vocal about contemporary music, or whatever. Like, or our Dalanie and I approaches to jazz, improvising. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the traditional path. I very much taught high school, middle school orchestra. Then I took my butt right on to Eastman. Like, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with liking that. Mario or Clifton?
I guess my route was traditional. I went to school on an oboe and violin scholarship, but I didn't like have a whole lot of lessons. So like I took lessons before I started oboe, and then I didn't have lessons after that. And I took lessons for a little bit like junior and senior year, but like consistent lessons wasn't something that I was like accustomed to. So like trying to get ready for a college audition was kind of tough because I'm like, well, I don't know what to play. Like, do they want to hear my band music or like, Dawn of a New Day? So yeah, that was a little bit tricky to navigate. And then in college, I played in all the chamber ensembles and stuff. And then my path, so I started in music education, failed a class right before I was going to student teach, which is a long story, but I failed it. So I switched really quick to performance and then put together like a senior recital in like 4 months, gave a recital, went to grad school for composition.
Wow.
Don't ask for the recording from that recital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had kind of traditional route. Y'all know I'm pretty dramatic, so it's a little dramatic story. But essentially, like I said, I played saxophone until right before college, and I grew to like completely resent the saxophone. So when I went to audition for state schools in Texas, one of the ones I ended up going to, they were like, "Do you play anything else?" And I was like, I play bassoon, and it was an entire lie because I heard that if you say this, you get more money. Oh yeah, you
Very
gotta get the
good.
bag. You gotta get the bag.
Very
No.
good.
So they ended up not getting any bassoon, so they were like, "Do you want to come as a bassoon major?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can you send a recording in 2 weeks?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it just was really. I learned the bassoon in like 2 weeks, kind of, and it was terrible. I go back and listen to that recording every now and then. But so I went to college at a state school for a year and had to fit like 8 years of bassoon in a year, and it was insane. I had a really good teacher, but then I needed to go somewhere better, so I went to Peabody. And there, with the traditional sense, it was really intense, a very big switch. I was really unfulfilled in orchestra a lot, and I also love contemporary music. And I played George Figure Haas's in Vain, and that really switched me over to mostly contemporary. And now finishing grad school, doing all of that, and now doing a
Mm-hmm.
contemporary master's. So just really deviating from Brahms mostly these days. So
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
deviate from Brahms to Tchaik.
exactly. Oh, okay.
Right. So,
Brahms to
switch
Tchaik.
over.
Yeah, a little switch to price,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about, you notice a void and you're like, okay, period. Somebody got to do this. It's gonna be me. So can you tell us when or how, if there was a specific moment or a period of time in your career that you noticed that there was a space in that traditional that traditional path of classical music that needed to be filled?
Oh, when we noticed a void that needed to be filled.
Yeah.
I can go first. I told you that I failed that class, so I didn't graduate with music education, go to grad school, but I still felt like I was supposed to be a music educator. So I was like looking for jobs, could not find a job. I mean, I applied to be like administrative assistant, like at 18 different places. I'm still waiting for them to respond to say, hey, we got your application, want to know if you're interested. And that was in 2016, 17. So could not find a job. And then someone calls and is like, hey, Amari, there's a school that needs a band director. I know the school. And they said, would you be willing to move back to be a band director at this school? And I said, no, because I did not want to move back to be a band director at that school.
Move back from where? So
I was in Greensboro. Sorry. So I went to undergrad at University of Central Oklahoma. I went to grad school at UNC Greensboro. So like at that time when I thought of like jobs that I would move back home for, it was not that school. But then I started to think about all of the schools like that. So this school was situated on the east side of town. That particular school has like some low enrollment, but the east side of town of Oklahoma City is majority Black. And so I started to think about how all of the music and arts programs were starting to like be removed from schools on that side of town. So we don't have consistent band directors or orchestra directors, or it's like get a director for like 2 years, then they go somewhere else. And so there wasn't consistency. And so I was like, those kids deserve to have quality like music education, but also consistent music education. And so I started thinking about, what I could do to help out with that. But the school systems are full of like red tape and like politics sometimes and all of these things that you have to navigate. And so I wanted a solution to that issue where I didn't have to like go through that system. So I was like, I'll just make my own organization. And so I started brainstorming about like names and things that I wanted to do and all of that stuff, and held a camp for the first time in 2018. Just with 7 kids, but like those 7 kids learned some stuff and they put on like a really, really great performance. And so that was the start of Arts in Action.
Period.
I'll answer for Black classical music educators. I feel like it's always been in the back of my mind that we needed a centralized place to find Black classical music educators, but I just recently acted on it, or I decided that, okay, I know so many people, we have to change something. and so many Black classical music educators and just Black artists who are great. And I'm going to make something where we can find all of them, because I don't want to say that we don't exist, Black people don't exist in classical music, we do, but we're just so often overlooked, and because of implicit bias, we're not given some opportunities. And there's also just a lower percentage of us in general. So now there's no excuse. It's like we have one place to find all the artists, all the educators, and I hope that it can be utilized as much as possible.
Yeah,
Clifton?
I would say when I switched over to contemporary music, not switched over because living in between both,
Right.
but what's it called? So essentially, you go into the space of contemporary music and you think it's more progressive, but it's just white supremacy and Doc Martens and a beanie. So it's not. There's really not a lot different, and a lot of contemporary groups. Look, it is what it is. Just because you play a piece that involves like 2 paint cans and a lemon, it's not diverse. There's still nothing but white people. So my project is essentially just like taking the contemporary aspects that I'm learning, taking the training I'm learning, and helping other Black people get the bag, and also putting my own music out there. And that's my project right now. Of I just starting to release my first EP, and it's just entire music that I've learned from Montana Roberts, from Lisa Harris, from George Lewis, Tyshawn Story, and Marion Brown, like taking all these aspects that none of us were taught in conservatory, in our music history classes, and applying it now. And now taking that knowledge when I go to do my master classes at different universities and being like, so there's more than John Adams and Philip Glass, like here is Julius Eastman, so that's essentially the space I'm taking up, because the world of contemporary really needs to wake up and realize like there is no difference from the white supremacy in classical music and contemporary ensembles at the moment.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like,
Oh, go ahead. No, period.
no,
Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna add to that and say a lot of people feel like because contemporary music is, or contemporary musicians are a minority in the musician world, that they could speak for all minorities, and that's not the case.
Oh,
yeah.
Imagine that.
It's like they try. You can't other yourself. You should not other yourself, especially when you're a white musician, because you're still in the hierarchy of white supremacy, and no matter where we are in the world of music or in the world.
So talk about the time between the awareness and the start of your project. Like, was this like, did you notice like this void like right away? Like, is this a build up? Was it like, or did it happen like right away? Like, what you talked about it, but just want to just go over that one more time.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Okay. For me, with starting the EP, it was an idea from my teacher, Rebecca Heller, to end my last year of GPD at Manus. But then Corona happened, and I actually caught Corona. So that was a really interesting time. And one night was really scary, and I was praying, and I was like, like if we get out of this, like we're going to do it. So when I healed and everything, I was like, okay, we have plenty of time right now. We should do it. And that, just the motivation of like knowing so much is going bad in the world right now, and like I am now kind of healthy from this. Like I should be appreciative of being alive and try to make the best music possible, and also honoring my ancestors at the same time. And that's what really drove me through the end of just trying to not look for the white gaze in this or get white appreciation, but just make music for our people and to celebrate our people, is what really pushed me to get through to the end of this.
For BCME, I would say that it was a mix of a build-up and just, also sudden. I guess the build-up would be me realizing that I'm so used to having white private teachers, and except for in high school, I had a Black private teacher, and that was great. And after college, they were all white, and I love my teachers, but I feel like, and they supported me so much, and they still do. But I feel like no matter how old the person could be, the white person, they will never have certain experiences that I've already had at a younger age. And so it's important to find people who are like us, no matter how much our white teachers may care about us. And it's also important just to give Black classical music educators the opportunity to be that example. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, all of my teachers have been, for the most part, have been incredibly supportive of whatever I've decided to do. Particularly, I'll have to say my undergraduate teacher, she took nothing and made it into something. However, like my experience with Mr. Taylor is like almost unmatched, because he's older, and he has experienced being Black in classical music at a particularly high level. So that was an incredible experience as well. So I definitely resonate with that.
For me, so the phone call I mentioned earlier came maybe like July-ish, right before school was starting. They were trying to, fill positions. And then I still couldn't find a job. So I ended up moving back like in October, moving back to Oklahoma City. And I started to talk about this idea of creating something to different people. And everyone was like, oh, you should do it. You should do it. So yeah, I had the first camp. I think it was in June of 2018. So I guess like 9 months or so between like when I thought about it and then actually launched with like the first event.
Okay, so we talked about, how although you guys are doing things that are enriching classical music and adding an alternative to the traditional path, we did touch a little bit on the fact that like you're still there a bit, like you're still doing both in a way. So can you talk about kind of towing that line and like how did that come to be that you were like, okay, I'm going to balance both? Because I know like for me personally, sometimes you feel as though, this tradition that's been going in classical music for hundreds of years, like sometimes if you deviate from that, there's judgment, there's guilt, like there's that sort of thing. So have you guys had any experience with that? Or can you talk about that and is it possible to toe that line?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say even the line doesn't exist. I would say particularly at Peabody, Mr. Coker, my bassoon teacher, was like, all of y'all need to take Baroque lessons. We were playing Vivaldi Concerti, and and Baroque style has its own specific articulations that can go with contemporary music. All of these different styles blend together. You have to play in tune in Brahms too, playing second bassoon really well. The same way you need to play these microtones in tune so the effect is still there. Like all of the techniques are still here. They're just the time periods of when this music is written, and the rhythms are just a little harder over here. So it's just that's how I see it for myself. Of like, as a bassoonist, currently, can you really make it as just doing contemporary? Like, we'll see in a couple years, but I still love playing in orchestra, and I feel like a lot of people still love playing in orchestra, and it's really easy to get pigeonholed into just doing contemporary music or just doing Baroque, when, like I said, all of these styles are very, very, very similar.
I think for me, I've always sort of done two things. So, I've done classical music, but I also have been a church musician since I was like 12. So I've always had like a church job playing piano or organ like on Sunday mornings while going to college, while even in grad school. And lately, especially after being a teacher, my goal is to let people know that it's all the same, like Clifton was just saying. Like, for instance, with my kids, we played an arrangement of Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely? And so, like, you can practice shifting and third position in Stevie Wonder just like you can other pieces that we might play. And so I really try hard to get both sides to see, like, hey, it's music. Like Clifton said, I want to hear music in tune no matter what genre it is. Like, it just has to be in tune, whether it's a marching band, whether it's an orchestra, a gospel choir, you must play, sing, phonate in tune. Because that's music. And so like we get put into these silos and stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of with Clifton that like there isn't a line, or there shouldn't be, because we're all doing the same things, just differently.
Right. I feel like people also, like, we collectively need to get the idea out of our head that classical music informs like our knowledge about other types of music, because contemporary music or music from various countries in Africa can inform our classical music like abilities. Like
And do
Yeah.
right, because
right,
there's
and
a
they
whole bunch
do.
of stuff. Right, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in music theory class where they be talking around it, and I'll be like, "Oh, from church when they go like da 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 da." Oh, okay, I got
Right,
it. You know,
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
classical music rarely informs other stuff that I do. To be completely transparent.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
and it shouldn't be. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it shouldn't be the default. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like classical music is the one genre, or even art form, period. I mean, you know, I don't be doing nothing else. So, but like the one like genre that separates itself in that way. And so when you're like someone that's like, I don't really know about that. Like, I mean, we've run into this on Classically Black when we talk about rap music sometimes, and people on Twitter specifically just really can't handle it. They really cannot handle that. I would equate like something I say is that like a lot of these rappers are more innovative than your favorite composer, and that's just
right.
Like it's
exactly.
Just, like, and if you want to ask me which ones, I can tell you which ones. Like, watch somebody in the chat be like, okay, then which ones?
Okay.
Like, but yeah,
let's talk about it.
It's like like I feel like classical music has this, I don't even know, like this superiority
Elitist.
complex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got the word for you, Dalanie.
You know,
If you
tell
try to,
anybody
like,
that Takeoff is elite.
No.
Okay, Takeoff? Nah. Put Takeoff on an instrument in an orchestral audition, he will win it every time. He raps
Takeoff
so nah.
is a rapper from Migos, if y'all.
Oh,
if y'all-
right, sorry.
Right.
Gotta give everybody their points of entry, Katie.
Okay. Very good scaffolding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I just, yeah, and then if you it almost seems like if you want to deviate from the traditional path, like it's almost as if it depends on where you are, it depends on the environment, you know. And I've only gone to one school, so I can't say what it's like at other places. And our school, the school that me, Katie, and Jasmine went to, Eastman, is fairly open, but at the same time, it still walks like a conservatory, talks like a conservatory. It's a conservatory. So like when you're doing like, oh, I'm gonna be on the mics every week talking about Black stuff and classical music and kikiing with my friends, like at the end of the day, you know, excerpts, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. When we speak about towing the line, it's also like something that Dalanie and I came into contact with while attending Eastman. You know, we posting every week about a new episode of Classically Black. You did to your lesson. They'd be like, so I saw you had your little episode out, but how's your concerto coming? You know, right. So it's like not only towing the line between genres, but like it's hard to be classical music. Like the way it's just set up, you have to perform at a high level. It has to be perfect or approaching perfect, and it's hard to branch out while doing that. You know, I have this conversation with Jasmine quite often about how like viola is always a priority for me. It doesn't matter what else is going on, it has to be. You said what? I
said, oh, that's good for you. I'm happy that you
right.
But that's because that's just kind of like where it is right now, because Dalanie mentioned guilt, and it's like that's kind of where I feel like it has to be. You know, it has to be like, let me get my practice in, and I could text Dalanie about Classical Black, and then I could do whatever else we're doing. You know, so towing that line in that space is quite difficult for me.
I'm not gonna act like I haven't gotten to a lesson. My teacher like, oh, new episode this week? Yeah. So how long does that take to, you know, you know, just a little casual question. I'm like, listen.
Right.
But the other thing with classical music is that what you just said about it always having to be perfect, which is a general sense for everyone. But then when you're Black and Indigenous and Latinx, you can't mess up. You know, we already have so much pressure just getting one foot in the door. And it just really, really messes up so many people in our community, because I mean, it's the constant pressure. I remember being at Peabody and like going in my first year, I think 3 or 4 Black students left by second semester. You know, it was just like, what is going on? Where is the retention? You know, like, how do these schools have this terrible retention rate? And then going to Manus for GPD, there were 4 Black people, 5 out of the whole school. You know, it's like, what's going on? You know, there's clearly a problem with the elitism, the pressure, and then the pressure on top of that of Black and brown students. You know, like, how do we,
Right.
where do we go to fix this? Because it's obviously at the top. So
Yeah, I want to add to that also, and like related back to what I was saying about the traditional environment being a problem rather than like what we actually do. I remember in undergrad I would be made fun of for being in the oboe room like till late at night making reads because that was the first time I had to make my own reads, and people would make fun of me for that. But once I made a mistake of any kind, or once I wasn't ready with my read, it's like I would go back into the negatives. Like there was just so much. I got so much flack for it, but that's the reason why I was in the oboe room all those hours, so that I could succeed and I could be seen as like my white counterparts in conservatory.
Yeah, and like, I mean, that made me think of my freshman year. I'm in the top band, I'm in the wind ensemble, and I am like first chair. I'm the section leader, and we have a recording. I have never made reads before. And so we're having like to prepare for recording. I've never recorded professionally before. So there's all this pressure on me, like the section leader, to perform with like the section that had another freshman and a sophomore. And like, everyone's looking at me, but I don't have anything. Like I said, I didn't take lessons. I don't know how to make reads. Like, girl, I'm giving you the very best that I have. And you're telling me that my best isn't good enough. Now, what you're saying is probably true, but for right now, it's as good as it gets. And I
literally said that in a coaching once.
As good as it gets. And I mean, the way that it like, I think arrests us as a person is like the other day, I was just talking with my therapist about like some issues I have about like success and like view of myself. And so she said, well, where does that come from? And I was like, probably from classical music, because we are trained to be perfect every time. And if you make one mistake, it's no good. We've all heard the story like, oh, nobody wants to hear music with 80% right notes. Like, that's the thing that we perpetuate. So yeah, it really affects our entire life.
Exactly. So it's 3 double read people here, technically?
Hey.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I played the bassoon in high school.
Well, look,
okay, we got 3.5.
So we can hit.
Wait, hold up! I played full.
Okay, go ahead.
That's not a double read. Okay,
I came
up
no
with
read,
that.
actually.
I said I brought it back. I was like, oh wait, that's not. I thought you said wind. Okay, I thought you said wind.
We here.
I want to be included. Is this how they feel in Classically Black? I want to be included. I played bassoon. I played bassoon for 6 weeks in undergrad, and I will never forgive that instrument. Not from that F sharp to that G. I will never get over that break. That needs to be re-examined.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, that's the thing. Bassoon, double reed, super inaccessible. Firstly, no one told me when I switched to bassoon that this heckle was going to cost $40,000.
Okay.
But secondly, I know so many Black and brown oboes and bassoonists now. And a lot of us did not go to Interlochen. So a lot of us did not go to conservatory with reed making skills. We were all so behind. Also, reed making skills are exactly. I remember asking my band director in high school about Interlochen, and he was like, "You can't afford it, don't apply." When there's whole scholarships, you know.
This gatekeeping, you know, that's a whole nother. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of class. We got to rebuild the whole thing. We got to get rid of the whole thing.
Rebuild it.
Gatekeeping. We don't have time for this conversation, but gatekeeping really grinds my gears because there's people at the top who knows what it takes, and they are the people who are opening and closing the gate to certain people. You know what it takes. You know what it takes to making little brown and Black people, Black kids apply to these conservatories playing Suzuki Book 3 pieces, not helping them. I bought my first viola in undergrad. I took lessons from 7th grade. I had no idea that I should probably own my instrument when I went to undergrad. Gatekeeping. Okay?
Yeah.
And my little viola was $2,000, and I thought I was doing something. So I had to get another viola. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Hey, we all got those stories. I remember my teacher saw that bass. He was like, so.
Yeah, when it was time for Eastman, it was
What
like,
we
yo,
doing
Viola
about
look real cute.
Mhm.
Yo, Viola real cute.
I'm sorry, we interrupted you. I just been to so many places
Oh.
that I can't afford it. I can't afford to go to Eastman. So like,
Listen,
but I went there.
Sally Mae knocking on my door right now, and we'll keep knocking.
Okay.
Mhm.
No one's home.
Okay, wrong number.
Mhm.
No, it's just
Man,
it's
I'm
so
sorry,
messed
but
up. No,
that really
you're
gets on my
fine.
nerves. Like, gatekeeping is really and then I'm not gonna say that part, but gatekeeping is something that really gets me riled up, because when you look back at your classical music career as a person of color, as a Black person, you really see that, like, you only really got here by the universe or the grace of God or whatever you believe in, because it's like there are so many people that will stop you along the way. You went to undergrad, you don't know how to make a read? Come
Yeah,
on, you know
exactly.
what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Nah, I went to undergrad with a rental. And my
Right.
teacher was like, so Katie, you
Mhm.
must buy an instrument.
Luckily, so my teacher in high school is Black, and he set me up with an instrument, like gave me a discount on an oboe because I was playing some plastic oboe, and he was like, yeah, this is not gonna work. No one told you that, but you need a new one before you leave. Like, and so we worked something out, but otherwise I wouldn't have known. I would have just went to school with my plastic oboe, like fully plastic. Sometimes we have top joints that are plastic to protect us from the weather, but no, it was fully plastic. Like, I had just started learning how to make reeds, but I couldn't make one fully on my own yet. Yeah.
They don't talk about the community aspect that has on the schools. If I remember going to Eastern Music Festival, I think it was the first or second rehearsal. Everyone knew each other. You know, everyone knew each other. They all went to Interlochen. They all went to Idlewild. There was a hefty number of Black people that year, and none of us went there, so we were all together. You know, but it was just like insane to me. I felt like I had missed out on a whole education. You know, but you know, as Black people, we were taught by our ancestors, we're gonna get the bag. We're gonna be resourceful. But it doesn't have to be that hard anymore. You know, like the systems need to change. As you said, hey, the gatekeeping needs to stop. It just, there's no reason this Interlochen online program should have cost $2,000. You know, it's a mess right now, and until these things get fixed, like, we're working hard to fix things for the future generation, but like it's very expensive. There's not enough scholarships, you know, and there's not enough teachers like that are not POC that are willing to really give the care and nature to these students, but they're still the ones taking these jobs in the Black and brown neighborhoods. So there's so many intersections of these issues.
I mean, and also we don't have to go down that path today, but also making sure that you're not becoming a gatekeeper.
Exactly.
But you know, people not ready for that conversation.
Mhm.
We moving on, Dalanie? You taking questions or we going?
Yeah, we could move on, because I do want to get to like how this circles back to you guys' the projects that you guys have created, because a lot of these issues that we're talking about, the different things that everybody up here has been doing are addressing them. So can you guys talk about what you hope the impact of your project will be on all of these issues that we're talking about in classical music?
Yeah. For BCME, my main goal is for Black classical music educators to get the recognition that they rightly deserve, while also being an example to the kids that want to be like them and want to have a job in classical music, or they just want to have fun and learn an instrument or a specialty, voice, conducting, whatever, without having to worry about racism. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I think for me, it's like partnering with the community to provide this exposure and experience to music, like including classical music, but also knowing that, you know, you can study gospel music or jazz in the way that these things relate. And also, you know, not just music, but all of the arts. And I think we don't like have a lot of interdisciplinary connections like in our probably programs because of just like the nature of how those systems are like set up. But like that's also important, learning to collaborate and trying new and different things. And so that's sort of my approach is, you know, providing you these things and then you kind of deciding how you want to use those.
I would say for me, it's to kind of start the conversation of reworking the pedagogy of bassoon, to get rid of the standard sound being this European sound, and also getting rid of the word extended techniques and just having them be techniques. You know, at this point, there's many pieces that you're going to walk into rehearsal and there's going to be multiphonic there, and you're going to look like, wow, you know. So to just bring these different sounds that the bassoon can make to everyone, but specifically the bassoon community, and just be like, look, this instrument has many, 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 many voices in this world, and it doesn't just have to exist in this context.
Sure. Should we take some questions?
Yeah, I think the last question was like kind of similar to the music science.
But I'm looking at the Q&A one. I don't know if that's what you're looking at.
I was looking at the chat, but you can go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just read one from the Q&A. Someone says, how do I know what my students know or don't know? Can I assume that they don't know anything just to ensure no gaps? Do I look carefully for gaps?
I can answer. I ask my kids. Like I do a survey, I ask them about like things that they know, things that they don't know, things that they like, things they're interested in. But also I think that once you start to create like a relationship with your students, then that stuff like comes out naturally. And you start to find out like the things that they don't know. So, I mean, we're not mind readers, so we're not going to be able to guess, but I think just, you know, doing things like surveys and talking with the kids about what they know or don't know. Also realizing that they might know something, but call it a different name. Like, for instance, when I was in music history, they were talking about melisma, and I was like, oh, that's a run. Well, it's the same thing, but like, we just call it different names.
How do you differentiate cultural appropriation from the limitation is the highest form of flattery? Oh, my eyes be kind of, okay, let me start over. How do you differentiate cultural appropriation from imitation is the highest form of flattery with regard to whites and blacks sharing each other's cultures?
I can jump into this one.
I knew it.
We're just gonna jump off the back here. It's Black people, not blacks, but cultural appropriation, and then also highest form of flattery. If you take an HBCU, you know, if a white student goes to Howard and he joins their marching band, he is now a part of their marching band. He is not trying to take everything from this marching band and start his own show band, but he's here appreciating it. He's in the back, he's having fun, he's kikiing and all this stuff, playing the trombone. But when you have someone go and write like the Katrina ballads that happened and take everything that happened in Hurricane Katrina and romanticize it into a song cycle, when this was none of your experience as a white person, and you know, so many Black people died in Katrina, that is cultural appropriation. Just basically stealing things, monetizing it, and not giving back anything to the community. And what I like to always say is like ethnomusicologists, when they go and they research this culture, and like Aboriginal people in Australia or Indigenous people in the States, and they write a book about it and win a Pulitzer, they aim to give 90% of their proceeds back to the community that they've learned everything from. You know, because what you're just stealing all the information, and not, what are you doing with it? Like, what are you giving to the people you took it from?
Yeah, I would also like to just add, I feel like, especially in recent events when people have been trying to highlight Black composers, musicians, all that, they've been like, well, a lot of white people have come forward and been like, well, is it okay for me to play Florence Price? Is it okay for me to do William Castile? And nobody ever asked me, is it okay that you're playing Beethoven? Is it okay that you're playing Brahms? Is it okay? You like, I don't understand that. I mean, I understand, like, I feel like it comes from a lack of understanding, a lack of thinking critically about what cultural appropriation is. So I'm glad that we're able to be here to, hear that analogy from Clifton. because I feel like if you're thinking critically about what it actually is, it just goes to show how deeply this idea of like whiteness as normal, as default, permeates classical music. For you to think that it's normal for all the Black people in classical music to be playing only white composers, and that's normal. But then when it comes to the other way around, there's a little bit. It depends. There are some things that maybe you don't touch, but like it's just a symphony. We can play a symphony by a Black person. Like there's just certain things that it's just like, come on, Anyway, we have another question. How has classical music changed your lifestyle?
I used to wear nails. 7th grade. What a time. One day y'all gonna see me with acrylics and mind your business, because that means that viola has finally pushed me over the edge.
Well, I mean, a positive is that like it's made me way more hardworking and attention to detail. We all know that. But like I was thinking of a negative recently, which is that people expect classical musicians to be like these basically politicians, like careful with what they say, what they do, how they dress, whatever. And we're people who like to play music, and some of us have made that our job, but we're not. We're just human beings, and we shouldn't have to be perfect at everything. Like classical music, we shouldn't have to be perfect at that, but that's another story. But I feel like people just think that classical musicians need to be the most uptight, like, I don't know, perfect in every way.
The first answer that came to my mind was not positive. I just thought about like all of the ways that I like internalize anti-Blackness and white supremacy, like while navigating that system through middle school, high school, undergraduate, and graduate degrees.
I feel like my anxiety is so much worse. I felt like before
Sorry, that's
conservatory.
not
No, it's really okay. I feel like this is a lot of people's thing. Like I feel like before I got to conservatory, I was happy, and that I could breathe when I played in rehearsal. But now it's sometimes under certain people I'm playing with or in certain sections, I'm like, this is a lot of crazy energy. Like we need to calm down. It's Beethoven 3. We've all played this a million times. Like we will make it through. We will see Eroica.
Right.
That's the thing. But I would also say that I like the positive aspect is that it really kicks my ass. It really. I will never forget playing in a section. One of my last concerts at Peabody was Eroica and Shosky Cello Concerto with Amit Paled. And that wind section was really great, and they kicked my ass. And I was just like, okay, you have to be on it, and it just really keeps you on your toes, And that's what I do appreciate about it, is that you can't slip up as a wind player, I feel like in the string section, there's a lot of y'all you can jack and jive and not really
Let's not
seen.
start some drama here.
Let's not, because your little bow be sticking out if you
okay.
go the wrong way. It's finesse, babe. I want to hear that. Now you down, bow, and now the conductor looking at you, so I want to hear it.
Right. And I've definitely heard some like straight from random people. So
not
that tell on you. In violence, you come in the wrong time, that E string will tell on you.
Okay.
Embarrass you. Okay.
Ooh, I know for myself.
But I mean, I will agree with like, I always am careful, me personally, like to make it. I mean, I do have a whole podcast on classical music, but I don't want it to make it seem like I hate classical music. I hope that never comes across like that. But classical music, it's very challenging because a lot of it is like internal work. You have to try to block out the noise and maybe work hard. I used to be a very lazy person. Anyone in my family could tell you that. But it makes me work harder. It challenges me, and also seeing that stuff applied to other areas in my life. Like, if I could practice for 4 hours, I can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work out. Like I've seen a lot of, what's it called? What stuff? Overlap. There we go. Okay. Next question. Do you know of a group of young African American students who have aspirations to be successful in classical music? The students of rock music. Dr. Armin Hall is a director.
Shout out to Armin.
Hit me up. Shout out to Dr. Hall. Shout out to Armin and their work. Hit me up. If you wanted some kids who will work hard, please hit me up. I have a bunch in Rochester, New York. And I'm sure Mark said the same thing. I'm going to let him go ahead because this is his panel, but y'all panel. But yes, there's a lot. There's a lot.
That's just the question. Do we know young Black kids who are serious about classical music?
Who have aspirations to be successful in classical music? Do you know of a group of young African Americans? Also, the ones in this chat.
I don't know that I understand the premise of the question.
Like a formed group, or like?
Yeah, my first thought, well, it wasn't my first thought, but is that it doesn't even have to be all of that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, music can enrich the lives. They don't even necessarily have to have the aspiration to be successful in classical music. And I also think that's another thing that we got to undo for classical musicians. Like, sometimes I see people, like, this is not necessarily related to what this person is asking, but sometimes people will be like, oh, well, they did X, Y, and Z, and they didn't really do that right, and my teacher would have said this, and it's just like, or they're just playing the instrument for fun, and I feel, and it's actually kind of scary how much we separate fun and pleasure from like what is our passion. But like, yeah, I think that, there are plenty of students, in public schools that are not necessarily that might not necessarily have the funds or the resources to enrich them, and then that's where people like Amari come in, and that's where things like Jasmine's project come in, and just people like all of us who are highlighting Black people. So I feel like there's a lot of students in El Sistema programs and public school programs whose lives could definitely benefit from classical music, not necessarily in the traditional way, but like a classical music education that is well-rounded and that is all-encompassing of what we've been talking about. It's different. But we do have a clarifier. So sort of like a support group. This person is a parent, a support group for their for the child. What I would say about that, Classically Black Podcast is an online community of Black musicians, and we try to do that. So.
Yeah, in Arts in Action, we're online. We're actually having a virtual camp right now, so you can find us on Facebook, and we can probably find somebody to connect you with.
And if you want a really supportive teacher, you can go on blackclassicalmusiceducators.com. We're expanding right now, by the way.
I just want to make sure I don't skip over anybody's question. I hope I didn't. It says I'm looking for a grade 2 middle school band music written by Black composers. If you have any suggestions.
Grade 2 band music, maybe Kevin Day. I don't know if he has like grade 2 stuff. Omar Thomas, I think, has like a grade like 2-ish piece that just came out.
Okay, I'm gonna put these composers. These are both people that have been Black excellence on the show. But I'm gonna put these composers in the chat.
Yeah.
Because they're both amazing Black composers. Yeah, there was a question earlier on that they wanted us to say like what schools we went to. Yeah, I think we mentioned it in the thing, but I went to Eastman.
Also went to Eastman.
I went to Peabody. I went to Manus, and now I started at Manhattan School of Music this fall.
I went to University of Central Oklahoma and UNC Greensboro.
I went to Illinois State University, and then I went to the Eastman School of Music, and right now I'm at the University of Memphis.
Right, you popping.
It's not diverge from what we're doing. Okay. I don't see any more questions.
Yeah. If there's no more questions, I mean, it was so great talking to y'all about this. I feel like the what I hope people take away from this is that like there are people in classical music, you can create, things to make space for yourself and people like you in classical music, and I think that's what everybody on here is doing. So I want to make sure that we get a chance to plug you guys' like socials, your websites, everything, so that people can find out more about projects. So yeah, so y'all want to go like around and say, and I'll make sure that I put it in the chat so that people can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
go, Jasmine.
okay, thanks. For BCME, the site is blackclassicalmusiceducators.com, and we're also on Facebook and Instagram, just as our name. And you can also find me on Instagram with my full name.
I'm on Facebook. My logo looks like this, so yeah, you can follow us there. That's where most of our content is right now, and then there are also some links to our website to find more stuff.
And you can find my website at guidrybassoon.com. And then on Instagram is JOE_WEY.
Oh, well, we got a question over Q&A. Where can I listen to the podcast?
Wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud.
Everywhere.
SoundCloud.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still putting. You said Guidry Bassoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Instagram at Classically Black Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, I know someone said they wanted to contact me. Just contact me on Classically Black, and we can go from there.
Okay. And then, yeah. So, thanks everybody for tuning in, and then thanks you guys for being here, being popping, talking about your wonderful projects. All of their information that you can contact, learn more about the stuff that they do is in the chat. So there's nothing else.
Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you.
Y'all for being here.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.